Have you ever thought to yourself, I hate arguing with people online because they're wrong a lot. This is true. It happens often. Which is why today we're going to talk about logical fallacies. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So this is section 2.4, investigating logical fallacies. And you're probably thinking, this is not math. It actually is. Again, it's remember, qualitative mathematics dealing with ways of thinking and evaluating problems. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start off by, I'm not going to go through every single one of these. I'm just going to list a couple of the main ones here. So that way, when we're working through, I do have some exercises. We'll do this. We'll work on this together to just kind of, to show you how this all works. Okay, like with some specific examples. So a fallacy is an ambiguous, misleading, or unsound argument. So listed below, I've got a ton of these, and we're going to go through a few examples in class just to kind of, you'll see as we go. So a red herring, this is a pretty common, I've got a lot of like really common ones up near the top, and then there's a little bit more uncommon ones near the bottom. There are hundreds, if not thousands of these things. These are the ones that show up the most often, okay? A red herring is introducing some sort of irrelevancy to distract from the issue at hand, right? So you're talking about a specific issue and you say, oh my gosh, look over there. This thing is way more important than the thing that we're talking about, but in reality, it's just a distraction from the original argument. Okay, people do this all the time. Straw man argument is a misrepresentation or oversimplification. So for example, if I'm presenting an argument that, gosh, I don't even know. Say it's like my kids do this all the time, right? If I ask them to do a chore, they say, "What? You don't love me?" Like, wait, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like you have responsibilities to be a part of our family, right? Like, but that's a straw man argument. It's changing or containing a misrepresentation of what the actual argument is when I'm asking them to do something, right? So one man, essentially, the idea is that you build a man made of straw, you attack it, and then declare victory while the actual opponent remains unaffected. So it's a good visualization. Ad hominem, this is personal attacks. These happen all the time, especially online. I won't give you any. I've had this happen to me personally. This happens like if anyone is involved in politics, ad hominem is basically like standard operating procedure at this point, right? It's just personal attacks on people's character, their positions. You're not attacking the positions, you're attacking the person, right? So big issue. Appeal to popularity. So a lot of times it's like, this product is endorsed by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, so therefore it's really good. It's like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, shouldn't the quality of the product depend on whether it's a quality product versus who says it's a quality product? Does that make sense? So yeah, it's not necessarily about like who endorses it, it's about the product itself. There's a lot of other ones. Appeal to emotion. Again, I'm not going to go through all these. Common practice. You can download this document. It's going to be on Canvas, so you can see it. You can kind of work through, like, have all of these definitions in front of you. In fact, I would recommend printing this thing out. So that way, when you're going through some problems that you'll see on your homework assignments, you can kind of say, oh, I think it's this one, or, something along those lines. Black and white. This one shows up a lot. It's an either this or that kind of situation. There's no other kind of in between gray area. Circular reasoning. Anyway, all kinds of these. But what I want to do, again, I don't want to make these lessons like an hour long each. I could sit here talking about all these logical fallacies for probably over an hour, but I will not do that to avoid boring you, putting you to sleep, watching these YouTube videos. I hope it doesn't put you to sleep. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a PowerPoint. that has a few different examples. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to look at the premises and the conclusions. Okay, so every single statement or argument relies on a set of premises, and then ultimately you come to a conclusion based on those premises. Oftentimes, when you're engaging in an argument, and when I say arguments, I mean, like, it can be any argument. It can be, like, I joked around, like, when you're online and you're identifying, like, all these logical premises that people are posting, like, that's just one form. But in reality, we deal with argumentation almost on a daily basis. And when I'm not saying like being argumentative, I'm saying like arguing your position, or if you have a deeply held conviction about something, then all of those convictions rely on a set of premises and conclusions. So knowing what those premises are and knowing what the conclusions are, it's just good for you to understand and identify what I believe, right? Anyone who's watching this who, if you're married, you'll understand, but if you're not married and you hopefully will get married one day, if you hope that, you get into arguments with your spouse pretty regularly, I would say. I mean, not like, it's a thing. Like, you have disagreements about certain things, but oftentimes what I notice is that the issue in our arguments, especially between my wife and I, comes down to the premises and the conclusions that are brought about as a result of those premises. That if we come to an agreement about, okay, you're misunderstanding what happened, I'm misunderstanding what happened, as a result, there's just misunderstanding across the board. So if we understand and align ourselves in our premises, then our conclusions are just going to make a lot more sense. So I hope that makes sense. In any case, the statements and arguments are typically read like if, then. The if part is the premise. The then part is the conclusion. So if A happens, then B happens, right? So let's go to the next slide. Okay, here's an example. You have to buy me a car or I will lose my job. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to identify the logical fallacy. If you have that document, I'm not going to show it kind of both ways, but that document that I just went through that had all of those logical fallacies listed, my suggestion is to maybe print one of those out and have it handy with you, or have it, if you've got dual screen monitors, have it on a screen while you're looking at these problems or this video. And it's going to really help you in kind of working your way through. Sometimes there's overlap, by the way, in these logical fallacies. There's multiple logical fallacies happening at the same time. It's not just this one exactly or that one. But typically there's like a very prevalent or common one that shows up in these, okay? You have to buy me a car or I will lose my job. So what's the premise? The premise here is either you buy me a car or I will lose my job. That's a this will happen or this will happen kind of thing. What that sounds like to me is a black or white fallacy. The premise only offers two choices, but there's obviously more, right? Could save up money to buy a car. You could call a friend to take you to your job. You could ask me if I can take you to your job if this is like my child, right? So, again, black or white. It's this or that. All right, let's do the next one. Excuse me. If he asks you on a date, you have to say yes. He lost his wife a year ago. Oh, you're creating all kinds of issues with this one. All right. Here's the premise, right? The premise is he lost his wife a year ago. Therefore, so if he lost his wife a year ago, then you have to say yes if he asks you on a date, right? That's the conclusion. The fallacy is the appeal to emotion. Since the argument attempts to connect an emotion, which in this case is pity. Oh, you feel bad for him, don't you? Oh, you must go on a date with him because you feel bad for him. Just a point of advice, relationships tend not to work when they're based on pity. Just pointing that out. Okay. Number 3. I understand that going out of your way is an inconvenience. But surely you know that there are more important things than convenience. That's insanely manipulative. Just point that out. All right, here's the premise. Going out of your way is an inconvenience. Therefore, so if going out of your way is an inconvenience, then there are more important things than convenience, right? And if then, if you think about if then statements, it typically is, it makes it a little bit more straightforward in terms of like your approach and understanding the difference between a premise and a conclusion. Okay, if then. So what kind of fallacy is this? That's a straw man. Classic straw man. A new premise was built to distract the audience from the initial premise, right? Oh, there's more important things than convenience. So you don't need to worry about, like, you need to worry about the important things and not necessarily the inconvenience, right? That's a straw man. It distracts away from the original premise. It builds a new premise. All right, question number 4, example number 4. How do you know what's best for children? You're not a parent. Oh my gosh. I have seen this one so many times. I cannot tell you. I'm a parent. I can give you multiple counterexamples to this. We actually talked about counterexamples last time, right? I can give you multiple counterexamples to this. Just because you're a parent doesn't mean you know what's best for your children either. There are many situations in which that's the case, right? Yeah, just throwing that out there. So you're not a parent. This is the premise. You're not a parent. You don't know what's best for children as a result. That's the conclusion. If you're not a parent, you do not know what's best for children. Okay, so what logical fallacy would this one be? This is a straight up ad hominem. It's an attack on someone's character rather than the issue. The issue is, you know what's best for children. The attack is, oh, well, you're not a parent. How would you know? But it's ridiculous. Like, my wife, so I'll give you a little bit of, this is a little side note. My wife and I got married in our early 30s. My wife is 3 years older than I. She's going to cringe over the fact that I just told you that. But she is fantastic with kids. She loves working with kids. And she didn't have kids for a long time. A year after we got married, we had our first child. But she loved working with kids. She worked with kids from the time she was probably in her teens all the way through, and is one of the best people I know with children. And that right there is like, in fact, I would say that she was even better than some parents that I'm aware of who have kids. And so, you know, that again, like it's a ridiculous argument to begin with. But you hear all this kind of stuff all the time. All right, next one. The police were unable to prove that a ghost wasn't responsible for the strange activity. Therefore, it was a ghost. Okay, wow. Big logical leap. An inability to prove one thing does not necessarily mean that it proves something else. The police couldn't prove the strange activity was not from a ghost. Do you notice the double negative happening here? That's right there, kind of an indication that you know this is not going to work out. This is a logical fallacy when you see double negatives being used, right? The strange activity was from a ghost is obviously the conclusion when the double negative is being used. So as a result, what logical fallacy would this be? This would be an appeal to ignorance, because it's drawing a conclusion based on the lack of evidence or the converse of the premise, right? Because you can't prove that it didn't happen doesn't prove that it actually did. That's what the appeal to ignorance is essentially saying. Oh, well, you can't prove that that I'm 40 years old. Therefore, I'm not 40 years. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? I'm not 40, by the way. I'm 39. Turning 40 this year at the time of this recording. So, yes, I'm getting old. Okay. All right, that is the end of this PowerPoint. That's the last example we have. Again, it's just kind of a sampling of a few different examples to demonstrate some logical fallacies. Again, my recommendation, I would pull this thing up and have it handy. There's a lot of these that I didn't go through, but there are quite a few that show up. In fact, again, on this document, this doesn't necessarily show everything. There's, again, hundreds, if not thousands, of logical fallacies that are utilized in a lot. These are the ones that probably appear the most commonly. Okay, so if you have any questions about this, you know, the homework assignments, anything like that, please let me know. I'll reach out to me, and I will do my very best to respond as quickly as I possibly can. All right, have a good one.